So Walt Disney, the creative genius Walt Disney, was fired for lacking imagination. Turns out the world's most iconic storyteller couldn't see his own edge at first. So what about you? What if the very thing you've dismissed, your quirks, your curiosities, your this is just who I am, is your greatest advantage? And the catch is that you're the least qualified person to see it. Let's change that starting today on the XC podcast. So it is true that Walt Disney was fired by his editor at the Kansas City Star newspaper for lacking imagination verbatim and had no good ideas. Can you imagine being that guy a few years later and seeing who he fired? But the truth is, at the time, he couldn't see it. Maybe Walt Disney couldn't see it because he didn't have his sweet spot. His brother Roy, you need somebody by you, right? Saw it very differently. They partnered up. They moved to Hollywood. Eventually, they developed a character called Mickey Mouse. And the rest is history. The Walt Disney story is very valuable for you and I, and I'll tell you in a second. But before that, I want to ask you for a favor. Could you please join our list of subscribers so we can create great content, bring amazing visitors? Also consider joining the newsletter. The XC newsletter comes into your inbox twice a week with all kinds of strategies of peak performance, of personal branding, things like that. I would love for you to do that. Just pause the tape, go to the URL, and subscribe. Thank you again. So what's the value of the Walt Disney story for you and I? This is the value. Even somebody as brilliant as Walt Disney didn't find the fit immediately. It took time. It took some nurturing. It took some people around him. I'm sure it took for him to understand what's the highest value he can offer. This applies to all of us, especially now in the AI age, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the first time I learned about personal branding, about how to find that uniqueness, I actually stumbled upon it. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't smart enough to find it. I just happened to be in a situation where I was an immigrant my whole life. I would move from place to place, and I just couldn't fit in. I wanted to fit in. I couldn't fit in. And I'm like, okay, so if I can't fit in, maybe I'll stand out. And that's when sparks started flying, and I sort of leaned into my individuality, and I saw my first success in personal branding. And again, the rest is history, because you never forget when that happened and why that happened. You might not even understand the full significance and weight of this discovery, but eventually it catches up with you, which is exactly what happened to me. Now, most of us have this fear of rejection, right? And it's the fear not of failure, but actually rejection. I insist upon that because it's a very primal thing. I think I've talked about it in various podcasts here and there. But really, historically, if you are in a tribe, that's how you survive. If you are rejected by the tribe, you're exiled, you die. Not in 2025. So the fear is completely outside, disproportional, irrational. And actually, ironically, the best way to fit in, if you think about it, is to stand out and serve your tribe in a unique way. That's how you fit in. So it's a bit counterintuitive, but basically that's the best way to actually do the thing that we desire so deeply in our hearts. So most people, we get stuck in between, I'm good at this, and this is what I'm here to build. In between, most people live there. So if we can get good at something and then somehow transcend the valley of death of not fitting in and how do you stand out and go to the place where this is why I'm here. This is what I'm here to build. You win. There's a concept that the Japanese have that really perfectly describes this. And the word is Ikigai. Ikigai, roughly translated, is reason for being. And basically, it's 4 circles, something in the middle, they intersect. I'll put it on the screen. And the 4 circles are, this is what you love, this is what you're good at, this is what the world needs, what you can get paid for. And we all live somewhere in this diagram, right? And most of us live off center. At the very center, the intersection of these 4 things, it's Ikigai. This is our uniqueness. And uniqueness is the only thing that can't be commodified with the AI revolution that's commodifying all kinds of jobs, all kinds of roles, et cetera, et cetera. Uniqueness cannot be commodified by definition. So if you find your Ikigai, if you find a way to live there most of the time, You're future-proofing yourself. That's what's happening. It's really incredible. How do you find it? If you're thinking about building a personal brand, take the Xponential scorecard. It's free, takes under 5 minutes, and gives you a personalized report showing exactly where you are and what you're missing. Now, we do this all the time in our coaching program, but I'll give you an easy to do exercise at home. Find a piece of paper, create 4 columns, and write this out. Fill in stream of consciousness words that describe the thing that you're asking. The first one is, what do you love, right? What do you love? And go back into your childhood. Nothing is insignificant. Actually, the insignificant is significant. For example, I loved singing, and I discovered that when I sang in a little children's choir, the world stopped. I was in a state of flow. I could do it forever. I loved that. I loved reading, for example. I loved history. So I would dive into these books that talked about the ancient world, and I could do it for hours and hours and hours on end. I loved travel. I loved languages. I liked culture. I liked music. So all these things, big and small, nuanced, maybe they don't feel practical to you, but write those down. Okay, the second box would be, what can you be paid for? And I can say, okay, I was paid for this, I was paid for that. Maybe in the future I could be paid for that. It's all very free-flowing kind of stuff, right? What does the world need? What are you good at? All of those 4 quadrants, you fill them out. And then you create a separate either piece of paper or a circle, and you start seeing which words from those 4 circles actually appear in all 4. And you write them in the Ikigai circle or in the Ikigai box. And then you think about it. Now, it's not easy. It's actually quite an anxious exercise for some. That's why sometimes it's good to have guidance, because you want somebody to interpret this into something very practical and transformative. But you can do it at home. You can do it at home. If you find that, your task is then, this is probably the broad strokes, almost like the draft of a painting, which is your personal brand. This can be transformed into a way of being in the world, in the marketplace, that is undeniable, right? Why is that important? Well, most of us, because we're good at something, we live sort of adjacent to that center, and we're like off kilter somewhere around, right? We don't live in the center of Ikigai. We're heavy on this side or on this side, and we don't want to change, and it's hard for us to move to the center, to that sweet spot. And the reason for that is because we've achieved so much. We already have status. We have too much to lose, right? And it's hard to make those changes, but if you make this leap and you start making sort of these mental, spiritual exercises and thinking deeply about your Ikigai, something can come out of it that is extraordinary. And the reason why that's important in the long run, although it's painful in the short run, is that worse than being rejected for who you are is being accepted for someone you're not, right? So don't aim just for this one type of result. Aim for the center. Aim for the sweet spot. Don't aim to go viral. Aim to be vital to the people who need you the most. Tell me what you thought of this, what stood out on you in the comment section. Share it with somebody who needs it. And also don't forget to subscribe to the Exponential Edge newsletter at christianrayflores.com.